Hey, everybody. Welcome to What Drives Us, episode 417 for Wednesday, June 23rd, 2021. My name is Russell Frost. I am your host for this week's adventure into advanced tech mobility and sustainable energy. Look at this amazing panel. Let me introduce them and get this show on the road. The person next to me, at least on my screen, and she should be next to me on your screen too, because damn it, that's the way I want it. My good friend, Georgia McKenzie.
Hey everybody. Hope all are doing well in this incredible summer heat.
Yeah, the beauty of this one is we don't shuffle around unless you'll see if we shuffle.
I am so all about the not shuffling around. I get a little unstable. The person who just spoke is our live stream engineer, our good friend, Mr. Supercharger Casey Green.
That's me. In fact, I still need to get to the Stafford Supercharger. It's right around the corner, and I haven't been, and it's been open for a month now.
That's Casey admitting he's a loser. No, that's so not. Come on, Elon's so disappointed in you right now. Elon's crying a little bit.
He is. I've done 3 deep dives and haven't cut them and published them yet either.
Yeah, there's little musketeers.
The last one.
Nice. Well, speaking of Elon Musk's tears, our friend in Portland, Mr. Patrick Connor.
Hello from this crazy heat wave where next week parts of Oregon, Washington, and Idaho are going to be the hottest on the continent. What's up with that? This is not supposed to be the super hot spot. This is crazy. Yeah, it's going to put a strain on our power grid running all these air conditioners.
Don't you guys deserve that?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I'm just saying, like, you have nice weather most of the time. Like, really, just
this is true.
Heat. Okay.
Yeah, but this is crazy. This is June, and we're going to be like 106. That's just nuts.
You know, there is no such thing as human-caused climate change. So you just need to really back off on that, okay?
Global weirding is occurring. It's for sure.
Well, speaking of global, was that weirding?
Yeah.
Oh, my friend in Canada and host of the Tesla Life, Mr. Mark Coughlin.
Hello, everybody. And no, we're not that hot up here in southern Ontario. So I certainly I listen to you guys talk about how hot it is, and in southern and central California, and now up into the Oregon area. Man, that's got to be brutal.
Yeah.
We're coming north, Mark. We're coming for Canada.
Yeah.
As soon as we open that border, look out. Flood of Americans coming into Canada.
We just want to avoid the shit bursting into flames problem that happens so often out here.
That is a problem. Like,
that's
like California's got what? It's got mudslides. It's got
earthquakes,
bursting into flames. It's got earthquakes.
Republicans.
You get a volcano sometime.
They have their own.
Man, you guys have got a lot of issues on the
We got problems. Oh yeah, we got lots of problems. I'll definitely own that. Okay, let's get this show on the road. First thing first, believe it or not. So a few weeks ago, in my typical sort of Twitter confrontationalness that I exhibit on Twitter. And if you haven't followed me on Twitter, don't. You probably don't want to, okay? But I got into a discussion that I've had kind of ongoing, and the president of the company got involved, and it turns out Mark Frohnmeyer, who is the president of Arcimoto, is a really nice guy. And I have huge respect for him, because here I am saying a bunch of crap, which frankly I think is true, that wasn't super favorable. And he's like, okay, fine, we're going to get you in one of the vehicles.
You have a long-standing hatred of three-wheelers, right?
So, well, you know what? I need to, okay. Yes, Patrick, that is absolutely fair to point out. I do not like trikes, but if you cast your memory back to the early days of this show, I was a big Arcimoto supporter. What was one of my very first favorite electric cars? The Corbin Sparrow. A really weird looking 3-wheeler lead acid battery carrying thing, but I love that car.
It looked like a nose, didn't it?
It did look like a yellow nose.
Yeah.
And that's probably being polite. Yeah. So my hatred of 3-wheelers isn't really what impacts me with Arcimoto. What is impacted my negative or created my negative opinion of Arcimoto was that when they started, I really loved the idea. And the idea was that they were going to make a cool electric vehicle based on a 3-wheel concept. And it was going to be $11,000. And I'm like, we're talking 15 years ago. Okay. 2005, 2006. That would have been amazing. And how cool would it have been? And a lot of my frustration centers around the fact that it's taken them so long and they still don't really have it to market yet. They've sold some limited edition ones for in the low 20s, I think, maybe the mid 20s. And they're making fleet vehicles and all that. Look, they made progress. So cheers to them for that. But again, what captured my imagination was the original dream, which was this cool 100-mile freeway legal electric vehicle that would be affordable for a lot of people. Now, it's an open, trike, so it's not going to be so good in Minnesota in January.
That's for sure.
But
not this version.
Not this version. But that's okay because there's lots of gas cars that thing could replace in other areas. Okay. It doesn't have to be perfect to be good. It just has to be good. So yeah, that goes back to that. That's why I was capping on Arcimoto. Like, come on, you guys, and you've lost your vision. You're not doing what you said you were going to do. And Mark was like, well, drive that thing. So yesterday, I went down to San Diego. Arcimoto has 2 rental facilities, one in Key West, Florida, one in San Diego, California, and one in Eugene, Oregon as well. Guess which one is the busiest?
San Diego.
San Diego.
Eugene, Oregon.
That's what I was gonna guess.
Because everybody knows them in Eugene. They've been there forever. That's where they're based. It's, they don't have
family.
to. Yeah, exactly. Word of mouth alone is enough. So they're brand new in both places. Now, Key West, very small, very compact. They'll probably do really well. San Diego literally just launched a couple of weeks ago, so they're really getting it off the ground. But I got to drive one of the rental Arcimotos, and it was a really interesting drive. There'll be a full-length video with my detailed thoughts, but I'm going to give you a little sum up right now. I'm still not sure it's ready for prime time. It's a very interesting vehicle. A lot of my concerns, Mark Frohnmeyer was quick and efficient to address when we talked after the review, because I wanted to talk with one of their engineers. Mark was nice enough to step up and chat with him. And a lot of this is going to be addressed with software changes. My concern right now isn't so much even the quality of the vehicle or the price. It's that launching this vehicle in 2021 is a whole different thing than maybe launching this vehicle in 2010. Now, there's a whole host of electric vehicle options out there, from micro-mobility scooters to a used Nissan Leaf, which all are very inexpensive. So the question is, where does the Arcimoto FUV fit into that? And I'm going to do some more thinking before I do the final review, but I'm not sure. I think it's better. So it's better to take time and build your company and build your production process than it is to flame out like Faraday Future. But the other side of it is, is there a window of opportunity that your product may miss? And that'll happen, I guess, when the thing comes to market.
Question for you, Russell.
Yes, sir. Please.
You're obviously a huge motorcycle fan.
Huge.
You drive motorcycles. You love to drive them.
Yes.
You've had many
Yes.
in your possession.
Yes.
Do you feel that kind of takes away from your experience in this 3-wheel trike because you are such a motorcycle driver?
That's a really, really fair question, right? And, I think I've said this on the show before, but the truth is, I don't like cars. I got into this. I got pulled into this, and this is a show length story that I'm not going to go into right now. But I got pulled into this through circumstances. I'm not a car fan. If what I should have done was start a thing about motorcycles, but I didn't. So you're asking, does my experience and my passion for two-wheelers affect how I would review a three-wheeler? Is that a fair reader? Okay. I think that's reasonable. And I'm going to say that the vehicle, the Arcimoto, in its current early production prototype version is more difficult in some ways to drive than a motorcycle. For instance, you have handlebars, right? They took the wheel out because the handlebars were more cost effective. Totally get that. It's great. And they have a really cool, not to go off topic, but they have a really cool regen trigger on the wheel right by the throttle. And that's how you do most of your braking. But think back, those of you who watch this show or on the show who are old enough to remember, what's it like to drive a vehicle without power steering? Especially when you're going slow in an urban environment. Now, you don't have a wheel that you're turning. You have handlebars that you have to kind of push.
On two wheels, not just the one.
The front two wheels, right. And that's where your steering is coming from, is the front two wheels, which is also where all the weight of the vehicle is. One of the things that Mark said, so I'm going to kind of blow my review a little bit here, is that they're changing some of this because of the torque vectoring they use in the dual electric motors that drive the front wheels, which makes complete sense to me and answers a lot of the concerns that I had about it driving a little weird. But I don't think so, Mark. I mean, I think that's a totally fair question, but I think,
because I would think with the motorcycle, I owned a motorcycle for a few years, and I would think that the freedom in a motorcycle is different than a trike. It just seems that you're more flying on a motorcycle than you are on a three-wheel trike, I would imagine.
Well, to be sure, listen, you're in a cage, but there's just plastic windshield and a roof. Okay. Otherwise, it is wide open, and it is experientially very much like riding a motorcycle. Now, you don't have that smoothness because of the three wheels. But you also have stability because of the three wheels. Georgia's expressed she doesn't like two-wheelers. If she was going to get something like this, I think at one time Georgia, did you say you wanted a trike?
It's not so much that I dislike, it's more that I am imbalanced and have never learned how to ride a bicycle. Three wheels is safe for me because basically my bicycle stance is this.
And there's a lot of people like you, right? That, I mean, balancing a heavy motor vehicle on two wheels is either takes experience or some strength, whereas it balances all by itself, right? It just sits there because it's a tripod, and that's a very stable form. I enjoyed it, and I think Mark did a good job of addressing my concerns after the ride. And as I told him, I want nothing but success for Arcimoto. I would love to see a million of these little things all over the place, running around doing things. My concerns have been that they've hurt themselves with some of the decisions they've made, and that it's not as commercially viable as it could be. Easy for me to say from the outside.
So I think now that you've cleared up why I have such trouble understanding this vehicle. As you said, it's expensive, it's late, it's shorter range than one would expect. And my experience is all from, I grew up in the Southeast, and where I am now, it still has weather. It's still practically the Southeast. And so there's only like 3 good weeks out of the year where it's fun to ride this thing. Every other part of the year, it's either too cold or too sticky. And I guess that makes sense now. And I mean, then there was also I get motorcycles, and this wasn't quite a motorcycle, but you're saying, with the sides off, like if you don't get the optional doors, that it's still very much like a motorcycle that you don't balance.
Very
It's
much.
hard to steer.
Yeah.
So
Wait until you see the video of my hair going. Yeah, believe me, much comedy will ensue. Okay.
So then at this point would be, then I should probably compare this to a Zero, right?
That's an interesting. I mean, no.
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 So I still don't quite get it, but I at least understand why I don't get it now.
It is very much in its own category. The Zero is a wholly different animal because we're talking about
A real motorcycle.
Goddess forgive me for making this comparison, but the Zero is much more like a two-wheel electric Tesla. It is an ass-hauling, frightening machine. The one of the two bikes I've ever been scared on in my life. One of them was a Zero. Okay, because you think I'm just going to full throttle it, and no, you're not. Yeah, you're going to hang on to the handlebars as hard as you can. So and again, this is another thing that Mark discussed afterwards. I thought the acceleration curves were kind of interesting, the way they do it. And he said this is still expecting a major software update, so they're going to work on that, blah, blah, blah.
Did they modernize the delivery concept vehicle? That way it makes sense now? Because you were saying last time we discussed it that it wasn't, why would you pick this as a delivery vehicle?
I spoke with him about that, and he is he's pretty confident that 100-mile of range will work. I'm pretty confident that 100 miles of range pretty much eliminates it from most commercial purposes. I'm sure there are some things.
Downtown deliveries.
Maybe, but I mean, even then, if you're a business, you buy a vehicle, you want to run that vehicle as many hours a day as you can.
Yeah.
And
you
he was likening,
so you can keep one on the plug.
Right. And that's the problem is that even opportunity charging, this thing's got maybe 8 hours of service a day, maybe on limited short routes. So it's going to be hard to pay that back.
Yeah.
But the Deliverator it's a really cool little vehicle. It's a really cool little vehicle. I just wish if it had 200 miles of range, I would shut up.
Or if it costs a little less.
Or if it costs a lot less.
A lot less.
Anyway, I've gone on way too long. Let's go to our next story here. Thank you all for listening and putting up with my gibberish. Let's go to Georgia, who has a story. Speaking of heat waves and the grid, has a grid tech story for us.
This is an interesting one. So it's a discussion that I have not really heard too much about, and I thought it was fascinating. What do we do with all these electric cars and the need to charge their batteries and everything else? Well, there's an article in Clean Technica that you might want to pick up and read. And it's basically saying, how about we just go vehicle to grid as an answer to the grid's problems? So a lot of people are criticizing EVs as saying that it's going to overload utility capacities, which can't quite say that it's exactly correct. But considering the fact that we have a really outdated set of infrastructure, hey, there was a bridge collapse today, by the way.
Oh, wow.
We can't really, you can't really guarantee that as we move towards clean vehicles, EVs, that we can actually handle the charging capacity. So these are batteries on wheels. So it'll take two things. We'll have to develop the vehicle to grid technology, and we'll have to help drivers be happy to participate in this vehicle to grid technology. Because the EVs are big batteries on wheels, and they can reduce the primary energy consumption of greenhouse gas emissions and offer the vehicle to grid energy possibilities. Since their electricity is stored in their batteries, their electricity can be used to supply the grid whenever the vehicle is parked. So the reserve power would be great. Like, say, if you just so happen to be in Texas in high heat during the summer, and your outdated power companies that were privatized and everything, tell you that you really can't use your AC and have kindly gone into your digital thermostats and changed your temperature for you without you giving them the authority. What if we could just connect our EVs and have a distributed load with those batteries? Problem, that means you can't use your car. And I would wonder also about a little bit of serenity issue, like you agree to this technology, you agree to participate, and suddenly they say, hey, it's going to be 106 degrees, and you can't drive your car from 3 p.m. until 7 p.m. I mean, how many people would be okay with that? So there's a lot to discuss here, and I think it's an interesting thing. And then there's, of course, the business model, i.e., how do we make a profit by, commandeering people's vehicles? That's a good question, because that's really the answer. Businesses are not going to align themselves with things that do not guarantee a certain level of profit, and that profit has to be shared with the car owners. Because are you going to volunteer your car to be an extra battery for, say, PG&E for a few hours a day?
Not for free.
Not for free. So a shared profit model would have to be in the works for something like that. How do you legislate something like that? But I think it's a fascinating concept for moving forward. There's a lot to iron out there. Who knows? We might see something where it's not just those of you who have solar power and battery banks that are putting energy back into the grid, but if you have a car, you might be able to plug into that and get something out of your car. So an electric vehicle might just be paid for, not just with rebates and grants and anything else that helps you get rid of a clunker that's polluting the atmosphere, but it could be an ongoing source of income for people who invest in those vehicles as part of a renovated American power grid. But we're still highly theoretical. Let's not. This is not investment advice. The show is not. This person is definitely not qualified to give investment advice.
So I like this concept because several reasons. Starter, like if I say, right now I keep my vehicle set to 90%, but if I could set it to so that I need 70 or 80% at all times ready to go, and it could use the rest of that and pay me for the wear and tear of my car, as well as knowing the fact that not everybody is out on the road at the same time, because then it would be utter gridlock. It wouldn't be like today where, some people are staying home, some people are on their off days, some people are running errands, whatever. This gives you that incentive to just remember to plug it back in, whether it's time to charge for the night or not, because you might get a little bit of extra pocket money. And as you said, we don't have to build out anything extra for this because we've already got the station. All you need is the bidirectional nature of it all. I mean, we see this with Tesla, with some of the superchargers that are in areas where the demand fee is just ridiculous. They actually have batteries in the supercharger cabinet that will shave off the peak for them. That way they don't have to pay as much. And in fact, some of those stations we've seen during outages, they're actually still on and serving multiple cars throughout the outage until the power comes back on.
The whole problem with this is it's not going to fly until we have Generation 3 batteries.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, Casey, you mentioned wear and tear. Go ahead, Mark.
We need to have a battery that does not degrade as quickly as it does today, because the most expensive part of an EV today is the battery pack, even though it's come down dramatically in price. But the problem is that you want that car to pay you back by years and years of service. You're hoping that your vehicle lasts, your battery pack lasts 12, 15, 17 years. If we get to a point where battery packs can be charged and discharged multiple times extra than what's required for your driving, then this type of scenario works for everybody. It helps out the grid, it helps out the person that has the vehicle, and everyone's happy because we can all talk about who gets paid what for what reason. But as long as that battery pack isn't degraded by the use of the grid, then everyone's happy. But if it is, I'm not signing my car up to it. Never will. Because I bought that car. I've spent that money to be a transportation device for me.
Right.
And I want it to last as long as possible.
Exactly. With that degradation, though, if they expected it for free, I wouldn't sign up for the power company. But I would be glad to use it for my own personal use at my own house, for my own solar. That's something, because I'm not going to put that much wear on it because I won't use it that often like that. But for my own purposes, I would love to do that, even with today's batteries. But like I said, with that, without some sort of compensation for it, I wouldn't be interested in signing it up for a public monopoly to use and make profit on and me to suffer and have to pay the consequence. Because as Mark said, these batteries are expensive, even on like a Gen 1 Leaf, for instance, right now. But like the current batteries, they set you back a little bit if you need to replace them out of warranty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't know how many of you guys know Bob Tregellis. He used to have an EV podcast, and he hosted the Plug in America podcast for a while, and he and I would debate this often. And I was saying it makes no sense, and he was all for it. And I'm obviously exaggerating both positions, but the car batteries were this was 2011 when we were having these a decade ago, and the battery tech was nowhere near as good as it is today. And when we get a 1,000,000-mile battery, I think this is great. And until we get to there, the degradation, the other problems it will cause, I'm still not for it. Ironically, I have batteries on the side of my house, and I allow my local utility to control them when they need to. And that's a dedicated purpose, and that's what they're there for. They're for doing that energy arbitrage. And when we're having this, record heat wave, I'm more than happy to let the utility use my battery if it means that they don't have to fire up diesel generators and peaker plants and pollute as much. So yeah, that and they're paying me for it. They pay me $20 a month or something, and that's even for months they don't use it, just so they have the access, so they could use it if they wanted to. And
unlike the car, it doesn't go anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've got 3 of them on there, and that's still not even, that's like a third of what I have in my Tesla. So I understand that it's a big battery pack in the car, but it has its own purpose. And demand response, or what some people call V0G, makes a lot of sense, where instead of when there's a peak, you send out the signal to smart devices like car chargers and other things, and they significantly reduce their charging rate. And that allows them to continue charging the car, but it also reduces the demand on the grid when they need it for some other purpose. And I think that kind of demand response thing makes a whole lot more sense with the grid that we have today. And soon it might make more sense to do V2G. I think it's great if you need it for like your own power in your house because your power's out. But just to do grid balancing, I think that's a unnecessary wear and tear. We're not ready.
Yeah. Plus, on your power walls, they're designed and engineered to do 100% depth of discharge daily, once every day.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And keep their warranty.
Yes. Right.
That part.
Yeah, it's a cool tech, and it'll happen soon. We're so close.
Yeah.
It's interesting how we're all fairly civic-minded people on this show. There's not a lot of people here that I would be like, it's all about me and the hell with everybody else. But there's definite limits to that, which is, I think, what this article has really brought out. Like, there are times when I'll share Patrick and his power walls, and times when I won't. Casey, Patrick, and Mark with their cars. For me, this just points up the desperate and far long delayed need for neighborhood backups, battery backups, community power backups, so that we can distribute that grid, we can decentralize it, and have local storage that serves small areas. We don't have to build billion-dollar mega packs or whatever. We just need to kind of spread this out. And maybe cars isn't the right way. I don't know.
Yeah, we just had a story about an apartment building.
Yeah, we did.
That had power walls, 24 power walls, and it could power that complex for 5 hours. And they have solar on the roof, so if they're getting solar even longer, better. See, that's a perfect example of it. It meets their needs, and maybe they can also help out the grid occasionally.
Sorry.
I really do think that, although I think it could work, we don't know. I think that asking people to give up access to their cars is probably a little too much civic mindedness. And
I
it
would
does
think so
not
too,
take
Georgia. That
I
doesn't
I
make
don't think
sense
it
to-
also takes. I don't think it takes into consideration though also emergencies.
Right.
If
Mhm.
you
Yeah. If they
have
want you to
one
lock it
car-
down, then it's not going to work. But if they just say, "Hey,
Yeah,
we need a 1,000 cars out of this whole city plugged in at any one time," then that's easy. But if it's like, "Hey, we need Casey's car plugged in from 10 to 2 on Thursdays," it's like, no, bro.
Yeah.
I think that would all come down to, just stats, right? Once a system like this goes into play, they wouldn't really know what to expect until they monitor the situation for a while. But they could also govern it by incentives. So
Yeah.
if your car
Yes.
is plugged in, you're getting the benefit of something. You either get a spiff that the car's plugged in for a number of hours or whatever, but you still have the option that if something came up, you could unplug and go do that with your car.
Yeah.
And I think over time they'd be able to know we got 1,000 cars on this grid, this vehicle power plant, and we know that at any given point between the hours of 9 and 10, that typically 98% of the cars will be there. But we know once we get to the time of 11 till noon, we know that typically that number drops to a 88%. So I
Everybody's
think
gone to
they'd be
lunch.
able to figure that out over time. And then
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if you rule it by incentive, that incentivizes people to have their car plugged in for available use.
Yeah, they're not going to require it to be plugged in. It's still your property and you can use it as you see fit, but they would give you an incentive to have it plugged in during certain hours, to have it available to them. And when they actually use it, probably an additional incentive.
yeah. That is a must to make this work.
Yeah.
We'll see how it shakes out. That's all we can do.
Mhm.
Well, Georgia, thank you. I think that's a really interesting. I mean, again, we have to talk about these things to know what's possible, what we can do, what people are going to react against, and what people will support. And if you've spent upwards of $50,000 to $100,000 on an electric car, chances are you want to turn it over your utility, or probably, pretty small.
Especially at 10 to 20 grand to replace it. If
Right.
prices don't drop between
It
now and
doesn't
then.
make you selfish or evil. I'm just
No.
saying that's,
Just means you won't.
Well, speaking of not selfish and not evil,
Let's go to Canada.
I never ever get tired of Mark Coughlin's reactions to my horrible intros ever. Thank you, Mark. I love you. Let's go to Mark Coughlin for This Week in Tesla.
Got a few stories to touch upon this week. We'll start with Model S Plaid going to the drag strip. We know that a number of Model S Plaids were released recently, and one was taken to a drag strip near San Francisco. And get this, they got kicked off because they were too fast. So how does a car get kicked off a drag strip for being too fast?
Speeding.
Well, in this case, it happens because the drag strip has regulations about who can run and what type of safety equipment is in that car based on the times that that car can run. So drag strips typically have a 10-second threshold. If you go below that 10 seconds, you've got to have extra features in the car for safety. You've got to have a roll cage. You have to have a parachute. You have to have a fire suit on. And of course, for every run, you need a helmet. But we're talking about a four-door sedan vehicle that has been purchased, not modified at all, and is running under 10 seconds for the quarter mile. So the problem, of course, is that this is new territory. Not a lot of four-doors purchased off the line sedans show up and run under 10 seconds on a quarter mile. And this is something new for the drag strip. We had an owner that went out and ran these times. And of course, you get a warning. And then the second time that you go under that 10-second mark, you're kicked off the track. So just kind of an interesting story about what's going on now with this car. People, of course, are testing it at Laguna Seca. There's a modified one that's been taken to Pikes Peak, which is currently in trial runs right now. And of course, drag strips, as this story has mentioned, are being tested as well. So just kind of an interesting story about what the Model S Plaid is being the paces that's being put through out there. Next, I wanted to touch upon a story that we might have touched upon maybe about 2 months ago. There's a company called Revel, which is a ride-sharing service. Well, it's more of a taxi cab or limo company because their drivers are actual company employees. And Revel had set up a system where they were purchasing a whole bunch of Model Ys that were going to run the streets of New York City. They had modified the cars somewhat so that the front seat has been taken out so the rear passengers have more room to stretch out. And these vehicles were going to be running the streets of Manhattan. And they thought they had their ducks in a row because the taxi and limousine group in New York had a loophole for electric vehicles that were going to join someone's fleet. They were able to get a medallion to run in New York City easier. So this Revel company had gone through the throes of securing those medallions based on having an electric vehicle fleet. And they thought they were all good to go. Well, it turns out that about a month ago, that commission started to talk about closing that loophole. Why? Don't really know. It wasn't publicized as to why they would want to close an EV loophole to get people a medallion quicker to get those vehicles on the street of NYC. But apparently just yesterday, a meeting happened with the commission, and yes, they did close the loop, and retroactively, some vehicles such as the Revel company are no longer, their medallions are no longer valid in the city. So Revel is stuck with a bunch of vehicles that they can't run in New York City at this point. And the solution, possible solution that the commission gave Revel was, why don't you buy 50 gas vehicles, mix them into your fleet, and then replace them over time with the electric vehicles so that you're not coming in under that EV medallion, you're coming in as just a regular fleet that's replacing vehicles. And of course, this was just kind of crazy. It made no sense to Revel, whose business model obviously was designed for using the Model Y exclusively. But it's kind of sad for New York City because, of course, we've seen electric vehicle fleets in New York, the yellow cabs. We've seen them adopting Model 3s, Model Ys, and it seems to be a big plus for their customers. In fact, some people request the electric vehicle to come pick them up as opposed to a gas vehicle or a yellow cab. So this story just kind of broke yesterday as to what the trouble was. Hopefully something can be done. Maybe some pressure can be put on the commission. Maybe people in New York can talk to their representatives and hopefully get this decision reversed. But at this point, it looks that Revel is going to be unable to run their Model Ys in the city.
How's about you running some of classic gas cars instead of them their electric newfangledness if you want to get them taxi medallions on the road?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Absolutely.
Last story we're going to touch upon is here's a good news story. The Model 3 has just topped the list of most American manufactured car list this year. So a company called Cars.com does a list every year based on the where these cars are purchased. Built, how many employees they keep in their employment, the number of factories that employ American workers, the parts, where they come from, country of origin, final assembly. All these things are tracked. So location, percentage of parts, whether they're US and Canadian parts or somewhere else, the countries of origin for all available engines or motors, the country of origin for all available transmissions, and the US manufacturing workforce. They weigh all these 5 factors. And what happened this year, with the help of Tesla submitting where their parts are coming from, the Model 3 has come out on top as the most American vehicle manufactured worldwide. The most American manufactured vehicle that is sold in North America. So for people that are interested in purchasing a vehicle that is made for and by American, purchasing as many American parts as possible, the Model 3 has hit the #1 list. And in not too much of a surprising move, the Model Y has hit the #3 position. So that's a good news story for Tesla and for people that want to buy US to help support their fellow countrymen. So this is a great story for the manufacturing and production of Tesla vehicles right here in the US, in North America.
Thank you so much, Mark, for This Week in Tesla.
You're quite welcome.
Let's go to Casey for another story from the T Word.
Well, it is
Sort of.
sort of, yeah. The catalyst was a Tesla story, but it doesn't have to be. So you may have heard anytime a Tesla crashes while it's driving, oh, was it on autopilot or not? And then there was a recent one in Texas where two men in their mid to late 60s lost their lives in a fiery crash into a tree in their neighborhood. The constable who was on site for the news people, I don't know if he was the first responder or not, but the one who was there when the news came around, he said, oh yeah, 100%. The wife's heard them talking about who's going to go and test out this autopilot situation. And well, it turns out he wasn't, he didn't have the jurisdiction there, and he had nothing to go on. And in fact, they found video from the surveillance cameras on the house showing that both men were in the front seats when this car crashed, not the back. And when they left the house, and the crash was like 500 feet from the house. So it's very unlikely these two elderly gentlemen are not elderly, but these two older gentlemen were jumping in the backseat. And so Simon Alvarez got wind of, over at Teslarati, got word of some of these inconsistencies, and they found out that it looked like the
Hello. Hey, we
Hello.
lost everybody.
Hey.
Yeah. Someone's trying to suppress your story, Casey.
Yes, exactly. I was talking about suppression, and it went away.
Down, man.
So it was found that that some of the footage was not shared with the folks who needed it. It was suppressed, and so Simon went through and he wrote a really extensive article that I think you should read about the importance of proper reporting and not jumping to conclusions. There was even another quote from Representative Kevin Brady, who was so sure, because he didn't read correctly, that the car was an autopilot, when what they were saying was they took an identically configured car to the same spot and tried to recreate the situation as if it was on autopilot, and autopilot would not engage. And he read that completely out of context and jumped on the FUD train. And so the reason I brought this up was George and I have been on Twitter going back and forth about the importance of not jumping to conclusions and checking your sources out. And so I hope we'd have a small discussion on this week.
Oh, that's my pet issue with modern day media, because
Yes.
as I've explained to people, if you want to hear what real reporting is this. Currently, right now in Sacramento, it is sunny. It is approximately 90 degrees. It is a Wednesday at 6:46 p.m. That is a report. What is not a report is currently right now in Sacramento, it's the most beautiful day ever. The sun is just right, the weather is perfect, or the weather is not perfect, and I don't like it. It's way too sunny, and by being this sunny, we're all going to get cancer because of, that's not a report, that's my opinion. And more often than not, all we get, no matter who it is, I don't care which side of the political spectrum, whether or not they're officially pundits or they're supposed to be reporters, we're often getting opinion with a wee sprinkle on top of some facts. And then we get to all pretend because we listen to so and so that we're now very smart and we understand fully all the issues. And I used to be able to tell my friends that I can literally tell who you got that information-ish, because it's not quite information from, by just what you say. Because I can look it up and I can say, oh, you went to this person and that's what they said, and now you're repeating that to me. And I'm not saying that to tell you you're not smart. I'm actually telling you you are smart enough to suss out what you think and feel about a set of particular details without someone telling you what to think about it. And going through that whole article, you've got the constable right there saying it. You've got the conflict with the actual video evidence, and then the dead freaking silence. And then everybody else who ran with it trying to prove what he said, instead of saying, okay, he said, this is a report by the constable. We have not found corroborative evidence that backs this up. I said it just yesterday. Our media is not concerned with journalism. They're concerned with scandals. And that's top of the line journalists right down to your local scandal rag in your community that posts everything inflammatory. I mean, there's more in common with Epoch Times from the, I think that's the Moonies, versus and CNBC. I mean, they're almost exactly the same because they literally just go for whatever inflames you. And the most, right now, media is concerned about getting your eyeballs onto it. So across the board, they are tapping into your fears. Fear is a very powerful motivator. It is often more powerful than what you like. Because if they can get you angry and afraid, they're going to get you to click, and they'll get you to share it. And you're going to share the outrage you feel and what your impressions are. Because 9 times out of 10, people do not actually read the article. And complicated things is complicated. Slogans and hashtags and headlines are the least complicated. And many headlines are not written by the people who wrote the article. They're written by the editors themselves and social media coordinators who are responsible for scheduling what goes out on social media. And their whole thing, and I can say this because I used to be one of those people in charge of getting people to look at stuff. And the only reason why I never veered into that territory is because I am stupidly ethical, which is why I'm not a successful social media coordinator. But being ethical with headlines is difficult. So it's disgusting, and it does make me question the amount of times we've heard about crashes or accidents where they swear that people were in the back seat. Now, we've actually seen doofuses do that. It's not that it doesn't happen. And that's the thing with media. It doesn't mean that this thing is not possible, but it does not particularly relate to the article and to the facts of each individual case. And we like to find an individual case and apply a blanket to it because, and this is a human failing. It's not one particular group. It's not men or women or white or black or Republican or conservative versus liberal progressive. It is a human thing to find a blanket term, a blanket view, and a blanket concept to make the world a more orderly, safe, sane place, even if it makes you afraid. It's still your brain trying to make it orderly. And that's the issue I think that's going on here, because we don't know. It's sadder for, I think, people to think, okay, these 2 older men lost control of the car and crashed. That's happens. I mean, you don't want to think that you're going to hit that age and maybe you can't handle a high-powered vehicle. And I say that to those of you very well-off men in your 60s and 70s who have high testosterone vehicles, shall we say. But maybe you can't handle it. Nobody wants to think that.
No, and that doesn't make a lot of outrage either.
Yeah, but it doesn't make anybody outraged. Nobody's going to be, everyone's be like, 2 old people crash the car. Oh, well, next time, go your speed. But we don't really know. It's really up to the families and the facts of this case. became international practically. And it really, what got lost in the shuffle is two people with families and loved ones and friends lost their lives in a crash. And that's that. And it's not Tesla's fault, at least that they can prove. And if it was proven, that is really the business of the families, their lawyers, and Tesla and legislators. And that's all that is to it. But that outrage piece, it maketh the money. And, you know, really good article, Casey, showing that not only can we create the lie, get it to go all the way around the world and spread misinformation. And y'all know I am not a Tesla or Elon Musk fangirl. I don't give a damn. Fangirl. What's a fan envy? Because that's what I am. But it's the fact that they have not come out and clearly said, hey, this did not happen, and we never get that follow-up. And so often corrections, the headlines will be on the front, the correction will be a few issues later and on page 37 in the back, small type, small column. Sad situation.
It is.
Interesting. Okay. That's all. I don't have anything on that. I'm going to let Georgia have the last word because she's.
Oh, but unfortunately, I have the next words coming up.
See, I just had to. I had to fill that. Well, thank you, Casey, for that story. Let's go to Georgia for the next story about a U.S. first.
I'm going to keep this short and sweet. Congratulations to Alabama. Governor Kay Ivey. I know it's a rare time somebody gets to say that.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Shout out to all my red state libs and Dems and whatnots, because I understand. Solidarity, baby. But profit, as is always the truth, will get anybody who's opposed to any sort of green business, green development, et cetera, in their legislative priority package, suddenly be really happy about something cool that they can talk about. Kay Ivey got to announce that Alabama will be getting the first U.S. graphite processing plant, which is a critical element we need for electric vehicle batteries. So that's not just first for Alabama, first in the nation. Not bad. Westwater Resources in Alabama Graphite Products will be doing this factory or processing plant, and it's going to produce approximately 7,500 tons of battery-grade graphite a year, hopefully expanding, well, that's the start, but eventually 15,000 tons. To give you an idea of how much we normally need, the battery in an average EV needs 175 to 200 pounds of graphite, and Ford's brand new electric 150 truck, the big shiny Lightning, is going to need about 450 pounds of graphite. So yeah, it's a good idea, and it's great to have it here. Y'all know, those of you who watch us regularly know I'm a big proponent of manufacturing and processing right here in the good old United States of America. No more shipping all over the place, because we want it as green as possible from concept to finished product. And that means not shipping shit all over the damn place. So good on you, Alabama. Congratulations. We are talking, about 29.9 million over 15 years, jobs and tax credits. We'll see what happens. But much success to you, and I look forward to seeing that happen.
I guess, you know, I like usually admit when I didn't. Seriously, 400 pounds of graphite in the F-150 Lightning? 400 pounds of graphite.
Graphite. I'm like, that's a lot of pencils.
Yes.
That's a lot of graphite. I mean, I had no idea there was that much graphite in the batteries.
Yeah, the lithium is actually one of the smaller components in a lithium battery.
Yeah, all we hear about is lithium and cobalt and
This much lithium, that much
Nickel and
graphite.
iron.
graphite. Yeah. Yeah, well, and we know that the Prius killed Canada because they had to strip mine the entire country of Canada to get enough nickel for all those Priuses. So
I
at
live
least,
in a mine myself. Yes.
yeah. I mean, you go outside Mark's house and it looks like a moonscape, all because of those Prius owners.
My favorite was all the pictures they showed trying to depict that were the tar sands.
Yeah.
So they flipped it on
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah.
Well, the nice thing for Alabama is we're talking an average of $21.15 an hour, which in that state is an excellent salary. Only about 100 jobs. So
Those are the best paid people in Alabama, except for maybe,
if
what is
you're
it,
not an
JPL in
elected
Huntsville?
official, yeah, basically.
Anyway, hey, I totally agree. It's wonderful that that we're making something here in the U.S. Go figure. Nothing personal, Mark. You're like U.S. North. I mean,
Don't
Canada's
insult
okay
him
too.
like that.
Yeah, really, that's
On
condescending.
continent. We can
isn't
say
it?
on
Canadians don't like
continent.
to hear that.
Yeah. All the Canadians just went, God, I hate this guy. Shut the fuck up. Okay, well, I'm going to shut up and turn our final story over to Mr. Connor.
All righty. Yep. So, hey, thanks everybody for hanging out with us a little longer here. So this story comes to us from CNBC and is titled "Underdog Activist Engine One is launching an ETF after big Exxon win." So just to give some of the backstory here, there's this activist investor group called Engine One, and what they did was buy enough stock that they could get seats on the board at Exxon. And then those seats on the board, they are trying to convince that now they have clout on the board. They can say, look, you have to do things more environmentally, because if you don't, you have no future. So if you want to be a profitable company, you have to change your ways. Now, on the face of it, in general, if I ever hear the term activist investor, I'm like, oh, God, why? Why would you do that? Because if you don't like the company and you don't like what they're doing, just don't invest in them. And that's been my mindset. And so this article, the reason I wanted to share it is it really got me thinking about things in a different way. If you only fight Exxon from the outside, they're going to they have huge coffers. They have this long history. They've got a lot of money. If you can instead steer their ship in a different direction, that's probably the faster way to get the change we want. And the goal is the important thing, and how we and getting there. So this was really an interesting idea to me, using activist investors. And now with this ETF that they're starting, if you buy into their ETF, that gives them more money to buy stocks in the companies that they want to steer towards a greener future. So normally, I would never buy, knowing that they're going to be buying these fossil fuel companies, I would never consider buying those stocks or ETFs that invest in that. But now this has actually got me thinking, maybe I do want to buy some of this ETF. I'm sure that I've got some, total market fund stocks and other things in my 401k that invest in everything in the market. So it's not like I don't have any, but I have never explicitly bought into them. And so just because this was a different way of thinking about things that I'm going to have to think about some more, I thought I would share it here and see what you all thought.
That's something I never would have thought existed. That's interesting. That
Yeah.
they're actually buying in to change the company from the inside,
Right.
by being on the board and being able to suggest things. I never would have thought that would be possible.
Yeah. And I'm sure that they're, encountering some resistance, let's say. But if you they have 3 seats on the board now, and if you get enough that you have a majority, or even just enough that you have a voice, and you can make your case of, look, this fossil fuel thing's not going to last forever, and or this cleanup has to happen, otherwise we're going to get such negative press, there's going to be a backlash, and that's going to drive people away from us, and that's going to cause more keep it in the ground initiatives, or more people going to electric faster, whatever. You could make a business case that they should do the right thing. And to have someone in that room that's willing to do that is a good thing.
Well, I agree. I mean, this points to something that I've always told people about doing activism in general. You can get out on the street and you can wave a sign, and now you have the hashtags, and you can have all the petitions you want. And until you have somebody actually capable of making a change who's in the driver's seat, you're kind of just spinning your wheels. You're going to have to actually participate. You can't be an activist by forming the march and then saying you're not going to vote. And if you want to change what companies do, then the best thing you can do is be a part of that company to make sure that it heads in a direction you want to do. So I think this is very clever. I appreciate it. I think it's very smart. And a lot of times you have people saying that, well, I don't want to be a part of it because it's capitalism. Well, your problem isn't the capitalism. Your problem isn't the ism. You're focused on the ism when what you actually need to deal with are the people. Because no matter what the other isms that you prefer are, the minute you throw people at it, you're going to make it go. It's going to go all over the place, and you're going to have the same old human greed making a big mess of things. So that's why we're constantly fighting the same battles decades after we supposedly won, because we can change all the systems we want. We can get rid of a company and have a new company happen. But human greed, it's a selfish trait. It's a thing that actually has some benefits to us. So it's never going to be completely gone from us. So participating and making sure that you steer it into the right direction and get rid of all your fear of whatever ism you think it is by participating, it's a very good thing.
Subvert from within. You can't challenge these people on their own terms because you don't have billions of dollars. So get inside, make the changes. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, my uncle has a saying that I'm going to mess up here. If you're in the room, you can be heard. If you're outside the room, nobody cares.
Absolutely. There's some political metaphors here, Georgia. No?
Oh, yes, tons of political metaphors. None we have time for.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, as Patrick mentioned, we're going a little long, so let's do some shout outs and go home because I think we've delivered a quality show tonight. So let's start with Mr. Casey Green.
So I've got a couple of videos that are almost done over here at youtube.com/Casey Green. And the one that's closest to finished is a review of my favorite car tray. Look for that coming up real soon. And then I've got several software update deep dives and a couple of other surprises coming. And of course, as Russell pointed out, I am backlogged on my Supercharger reviews, so plenty of them to come as well. So catch you there.
Do visit Casey's awesome YouTube channel, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so you know when he puts up something new. Let's go to Patrick Connor.
Hello, I am with the Oregon Electric Vehicle Association. You can find us at oeva.org. And I also blog occasionally at carswithcords.net.
I can't do. Oh, there's a skill. There's a real skill. Nice.
So my latest blog post is about just 2 days ago when my local utility said, "Hey, we'd like to use your battery," and I said, "Great," and then they actually turned down the amount that it was discharging, which is not what they intended. So yeah, you can read about how and why that happened at carswithcords.net. Thanks.
Insane. Mark Coughlin.
Okay,
Take it away,
short and
my
sweet.
friend.
If you have not pressed the like button, what are you waiting for? Press that, help us out. Press the subscribe, ring that bell, and it's all free. It doesn't cost you a dime, but it helps us. So please do that. Help us out. You can also follow us on all the social media channels. Just look up What Drives Us. We're there. So with that, have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coughlin. And wise words as always, sir. Speaking of wise words, I'm going to leave it to Georgia McKenzie to bring this show home.
Well, we just want to thank you guys for hanging out with us for this hour. We hope you learned a lot, got some new things churning through your brain, stuff to think about, and hopefully you'll check out some of these articles and form your own damned opinions. You don't need to listen to us on everything. That's what we're here for. We're just giving you a little starter shove. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to this channel. Bounce over to the Tesla Life because you know Mark's going to have tons of information for you. Hit like and subscribe there. Pop over to Casey's because between the car following and all his technical stuff that I will not get into because I don't want to be a technical person, I let him do that, and he's doing that for you too. So hit like and subscribe over there. And wait, carswithcords.net, you got Patrick's writing. More for you. We give you all the good stuff. Follow everybody here, and we hope you have had a bang-up time and you have a great weekend. Back to you, Russell.
Thank you so much, Georgia. As always, I want to thank Michael Manring for his amazing theme music. Visit him at manthing.com. And for the love of all that is holy, buy a song, buy something, okay? Manthing.com. You can find Michael's music all over, everywhere. I want to thank Georgia McKenzie, Casey Green, Mark Coughlin, and Patrick Connor for delivering another amazing hour. I want to update, even though we talked for probably longer than I intended about the Arcimoto thing, rest assured there's lots of stuff we didn't talk about in the upcoming review. Do check it out. I'm very excited about it. Also, lots of killer new video coming up from the Toyota debut event last week and all sorts of other things. Thanks to your generous donations for the What Drives a Studio computer, which is now in place in Southern California. So that's all I got. Until next week, tune in and find out what drives us. It's just like I'm playing it.
Oh,
Stay
no,
positive.
it's too high.
Test negative.